So right now you're on the Rep That Show, and I'm here with Huseyin, who's an MMA fighter, and he's got a title fight for K1.
Yeah.
Yeah?
MMA fighter turned K1 fighter, it seems.
Well, tell us a bit about your journey, man.
Well, I started training MMA about 2 years ago, just out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then found out I liked it, kept sticking at it, had a few semi-pro fights, stepped up. I'm undefeated as a pro in MMA with 2-0.
Okay.
Had a K1 fight a few weeks back, and now tomorrow night I'm fighting for the K1 belt.
So how did you get into K1? Because I always thought that was like a Japanese kind of, you know what I mean, foreign.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had a link up over here.
Yeah, well, part of our training at Bandle's MMA is we have to do stand-up training, K1.
Okay.
And found out I actually was quite good at it.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not just test myself? And the only way for me to test myself is pretty much go against the people that rank the best.
Yeah.
And this guy that I'm fighting, he's apparently had a few years doing kickboxing, was undefeated for a while. So I thought, why not test myself and try and beat someone?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of training regimes have you gone through up to this point? Like, do you go through the same thing, or is it different?
No, normally for an MMA fight, I've trained like once, sometimes twice a day, 6 to 7 days a week, doing a mixture of everything: wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing. But for this fight, because I knew it was for a title, I moved away from all other aspects and just stuck with the kickboxing. And I was put through my paces at our K1 gym. I was put through it. So I'm confident that when I get in there and I let my hands and legs do the talking, he's going to wish he never got in there with me.
So I ain't gonna lie, you look quite young. So for any people coming up that is obviously seeing the art and want to get involved, what would you suggest to them how to kind of get involved?
Well, at the moment, I'm only 21. But MMA and the fighting situations in England, it has toned me down a lot from what I was like younger on the streets, and it's taught me self-discipline and the way to handle myself. Like on the streets, if someone was to come up and approach me and want to fight me, I won't fight you out on the streets. I'll move away from it. But once we get in the cage, it all changes and you're like my enemy and I will take your head off. But outside, as soon as the fight's done, I shake your hand, I congratulate you, because everyone getting in there is a warrior.
And one thing that is like, a lot of people, when they see people fighting, they might just think that the sport is just purely based on testosterone and all fighting, but when you see everyone together, you can clearly see that everyone is friends. You know what I mean? And that's the one thing this sport is, as much as there's a lot of fighting, the discipline is first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like there's a lot of rules in MMA, and the only way to stick to them rules is if you're disciplined inside the cage, and you only learn that self-discipline when you're training every day. And when you get hit inside the gym, you don't just flip out and just start going crazy. You've got to learn to control it. It's controlled anger. So yeah.
Okay, so what goals have you got for this year? As with the K1 as well, the title that you're gonna obviously get tomorrow.
Well, my aim is obviously to win this title tomorrow, and then within the next year or even the next 2 years, my aim is to conquer England and win MMA belts in England in as many organisations as possible, especially UCMMA. And I want to hold all the belts and pretty much just try and elevate myself to America if I can. If they'd have me over there, I'll test myself over there as well. But it is domination for me I'm looking for.
With Dream the Dream, and I'm lucky enough to be at the Troxy for the UCMMA press conference, and here I have.
Hi, my name's James Lutman, 27 years old, from Staines, and I'm the current UCMMA bantamweight champion.
Okay, James, so can you tell us a little bit how you prepared for the big fight tomorrow?
I've just got back from 2 weeks training out in Thailand. Went out there, just it's good for the old fitness, work on my kickboxing a little bit. Just got to do whatever you can to make sure you're prepared for these fights, because 15 minutes of MMA, it's hard.
So during the press conference I heard that you were a judo champion. So what made you make the transition from being a judo champion to MMA?
Money. Nah. I just think it's an evolving sport. Like judo is very old-fashioned. I mean, it's in the Olympics, and you know, chances are I probably could have qualified for the Olympics, but I just found MMA a lot more interesting. You know, it's more versatile as a sport. It's harder, and I think it's the future. I think all sports are going to end up looking at MMA as the big. I think it's the biggest growing sport in the world, and I think it's the next big thing. So.
Okay, what do you think about what needs to be done within the industry to get it from being as nearly as big as UFC? What needs to be done over here, do you think?
I think it's just more televised events. You know, people need to become educated to the sport. At the moment, it's very much friends of fighters and family and stuff, whereas if it was shown more on the TV week in, week out, people would get educated to the sport, appreciate the ground as well as the stand. Everyone wants to see a big knockout, but you know, the groundwork's just as interesting if you know what you're looking for. So the more it gets televised and the more mainstream it becomes, I think, you know, it's limitless how big it becomes.